Jesus is taken before Caiaphas the high priest, who is in on this whole scheme. Peter follows the crowd, watching them from a distance to see what happens. The priests are trying to come up with a case against Jesus, but they can't find any witnesses who can agree with each other. Eventually, 2 people agree that Jesus had claimed that he could destroy God's temple and rebuild it in 3 days. The high priest is like, "Aren't you going to say anything, Jesus?" Jesus says nothing. The high priest puts Jesus under oath and says, "Tell us if you're the Messiah, the Son of God." Jesus says, "You said it." He then says to the crowd, "But I say to all of you, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." The high priest tears his own clothes, crying, "Blasphemy!" The crowd cries, "Kill him!" They then attack Jesus, spitting on him and hitting him and yelling, "Prophesy to us, Messiah, who hit you?" Peter then disowns Jesus. When Judas sees that they're going to kill Jesus, he is seized with remorse and tries to give the 30 pieces of silver back to the priests, saying, "I have sinned, for I have betrayed innocent blood." The priests, whose job it is to lead sinful people back to God in confession and forgiveness, say to Judas, "What's that to us? Your sin is your own problem." Judas throws the money into the temple and runs away and hangs himself. The priests don't know what to do with the money because they know it's blood money, so they later decide to buy the potter's field with it, and they call it the Field of Blood. Matthew says that this took place to fulfill the words of the prophets, and he quotes both Jeremiah and Zechariah saying, "They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field, as the Lord commanded me." Very early in the morning, the Sanhedrin decided to drag Jesus over to the Roman governor Pilate for a decision on what to do with him. Pilate's like, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus is like, "You said it." The priests started accusing Jesus of all kinds of stuff, but Jesus didn't say anything, so Pilate was like, "Aren't you going to say something in your own defense?" But Jesus still said nothing, and Pilate was amazed at him. At this point, the narrator informs us that it was traditional for a prisoner to be released once a year at the request of the people. He also tells us that there was at this time a known terrorist and murderer locked up in prison named Jesus Barabbas. Pilate uses this opportunity to ask the crowd who they would like to release, Jesus Barabbas or Jesus Christ. Pilate's wife also shows up to tell her husband to have nothing to do with Jesus, saying that she'd had a terrible dream about him that morning. But the crowd had turned against Jesus, and they were like, "No, give us the terrorist, set Barabbas free." Pilate thought this was kind of stupid, so he was like, "What should I do with this king of the Jews then?" The crowd shouted, "Crucify him." Pilate was dumbfounded and asked why, what crime has he committed? But the crowd kept screaming, "Crucify!" So in order to avoid a riot, Pilate gave in to them. He also symbolically washed his hands in front of the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. He is your responsibility." The crowd shouted back, "His blood be on us and our children." He released Barabbas and had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. The soldiers mocked Jesus. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots, and sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Above his head they placed the written charge against him, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." 2 rebels were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." In the same way, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders mocked him. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel? Let him come down now from the cross and we'll believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him. For he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" In the same way, the rebels who were crucified with him also heaped insults on him. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He was quoting Psalm 22, the death psalm. Those nearby misheard him and thought he was calling for Elijah. One of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with wine vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. The other said, "Leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him." Jesus cried out again in a loud voice and gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in 2 from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. Matthew says that the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those with them who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, Surely he was the Son of God. Many women were there watching from a distance, including Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, or Jesus' mother, and the mother of Zebedee's sons, James and John's mother. Matthew notes that they had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs.